box waiting for the cross, and it was Bale! And then
Pay close to £100 million for a new player.
Inflating prices and misleading fans over the sale of tickets for the upcoming World Cup.
Dominates, claiming about 11 out of the top 20 places by wealth.
He said to me, he says, I'm retiring.
Are any better than any of those sides?
I'd expect that they would be successful, but they've got a great challenge ahead because Chelsea.
What's going on with my club? What's going on?
That's football heritage.
You just got a windfall of $50 million, and congratulations, because you're thinking about owning a European football team and becoming a legend who's beloved by the fans. You're imagining yourself as the owner of a storied club with history and tradition, a place where passionate fans sing and celebrate your team every week. You think you'll buy the team, invest some money, win some trophies, and become one of the most powerful people in global sports. The reality is completely different and way more depressing, because football team ownership isn't like buying an American franchise at all. There is no franchise fee you can pay to get a guaranteed spot in a league. There is no salary cap. There is no parity. There's just a centuries-old club with massive debts, deep tradition, and a fan base that will absolutely hate you no matter what you do. By the end of this video, you'll understand why owning a football team isn't an investment, and it's definitely not a path to wealth. It's actually just a way to pour $50 million into an endless pit of player salaries and transfer fees, and watch your money disappear while angry fans burn your effigy outside the stadium. Let's start with how football ownership even works, because it's completely different from what you think. In American sports, you buy a franchise. You pay the league billions of dollars for the privilege of owning a team that's guaranteed to play in a major league forever. In football, it doesn't work that way at all. Most European football clubs are decades or even centuries-old institutions that are embedded in their communities. They have deep roots. They have massive debts from years of mismanagement. They have legions of fans who think they own the club emotionally and will fight you constantly. You're not buying a franchise. You're buying into a never-ending nightmare of tradition and expectation. In Europe, there's a system called promotion and relegation that doesn't exist in American sports, and it completely changes the economics. If your team finishes in the bottom spots of the league, you get relegated to a lower division. Your revenue plummets, your best players leave, your stadium is half empty. If you finish at the top, you get promoted and start making real money. This means there's no guaranteed revenue stream. You could invest billions, finish last, and lose everything. The league doesn't protect you. The system doesn't care about your investment. Then there's the actual cost of owning the team, which is fucking insane, and most people don't understand how bad it gets. The biggest expense by far is player salaries. A top European football team's salary bill runs anywhere from $50 million to over $400 million per year. That's just for paying the players to kick a ball around. Manchester City spends over $400 million per year on salaries. Real Madrid spends similar amounts. Liverpool, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, they're all spending hundreds of millions just on player wages. You think your $50 million is going to be enough? You're absolutely fucked before you even start. But salaries are just the beginning, because you also have transfer fees, which are completely insane and make no sense. When you want to buy a player from another team, you pay a transfer fee. A decent player costs 20 to 50 million. A great player costs 100 to 200 million. Kylian Mbappe cost PSG $220 million just to buy him. That's on top of paying his salary. You're spending hundreds of millions to buy players and then paying them hundreds of millions more in salaries. It's fucking ridiculous and unsustainable. Then there's the stadium, which you either own or lease, and it's extremely expensive. Modern stadiums cost hundreds of millions to build or renovate. Maintenance costs millions per year. Match day operations, cleaning, security, all of it adds up. You need a state-of-the-art facility to compete at the highest level. You also probably need a modern youth academy to develop young talent. That costs tens of millions to set up and operate. Coaching staff, scouts, facilities, all of it. You're looking at hundreds of millions in infrastructure costs just to have a chance at competing. Then there's all the other shit that costs money. Administrative staff, marketing, medical facilities, travel for away matches, broadcasting infrastructure, youth academy facilities that might never produce a player good enough to make it, sponsorship, activation. Everything costs money, and there's no American salary cap to protect you from spending too much. You can spend as much as you want and go bankrupt doing it. Now let's talk about revenue, which is where things get depressing as fuck. There are three main revenue streams for a football club: broadcasting rights, match day revenue, and commercial revenue. Broadcasting rights sound great until you realize how much actually goes to you. In Europe, a league sells broadcasting rights collectively. The Premier League in England makes about $3 billion per year in broadcasting rights. That gets divided among 20 teams, That's 150 million per team on average. But that's gross revenue. You also have to split it with other clubs and pay the league. You're looking at maybe 50 to 80 million per team from broadcasting if you're in a top league. If you're in a lower league, you're making almost nothing. Matchday revenue is just ticket sales and concession. You sell 70,000 tickets per home game at $50 to $100 each. That's 3 to 7 million per game. You play maybe 20 home games per season. That's 60 to 140 million per year. But you need to pay the stadium, pay security, pay staff, all of it. Your actual profit from matchday is probably 20 to 40 million. That sounds good until you remember you're spending hundreds of millions on player salaries. Commercial revenue is sponsorships, shirt sales, merchandise. A top club like Manchester United makes 200 million in commercial revenue. A mid-tier club makes 50 to 100 million. A small club makes 10 to 20 million. You're thinking your 50 million will be enough to own a club and compete. It's not even close. You need a club that's already generating 400 to 500 million in revenue just to break even after paying salaries. This is why most football clubs don't actually make profit. They operate at a loss or barely break even. The Premier League clubs collectively lose money every year. La Liga clubs lose money. Serie A clubs lose money. Bundesliga clubs lose money. Barcelona was losing millions per year while their debt spiraled to $1.5 billion. Juventus lost hundreds of millions. AC Milan almost went bankrupt. These are some of the biggest clubs in the world, and they're bleeding cash. Here's what most people don't understand about football economics. Clubs don't try to make profit. They try to win. Winning takes money. More money than they make in revenue. So they go into debt. They spend what they make, plus whatever they can borrow. It's a business model where losing money is the default. You're not going to be the exception. You're going to follow the same pattern. Meet Roman Abramovich, Russian billionaire who bought Chelsea in 2003 for about $140 million. He then spent over $1 billion in the first few years buying players and paying salaries. He spent money like a madman trying to win the Premier League and the Champions League. He succeeded on the field. He won multiple championships. But he spent so much money that Chelsea was always losing hundreds of millions per year. By 2022, when he tried to sell the club because of sanctions, he couldn't find a buyer willing to pay anywhere near what he'd spent. The club that he'd poured billions into was worth a fraction of that. One buyer offered $6 billion. That sounds like a lot, until you realize he'd spent over $5 billion just in salaries over 20 years. He lost money on the entire investment, and he's a fucking billionaire. Then there's the Newcastle United situation. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund bought Newcastle for about $300 million in 2021. They promised to invest billions. They promised to make Newcastle a super club. They've spent hundreds of millions on players and salaries. They're still not in the Champions League. Their revenue hasn't grown enough to cover the spending. They're operating at losses. If they finish outside the top 4, their revenue drops and they can't compete anymore. They're stuck on a treadmill of spending money trying to compete with clubs that spend even more money. Or look at Paris Saint-Germain, which is owned by Qatar's government through their investment fund. PSG has spent billions on superstars like Neymar, Mbappe, Cavani. They pay massive salaries. They win the league every year because they're the richest club. But they've never won the Champions League despite spending more than anyone else. They lose hundreds of millions every year. They're subsidized by the government of Qatar. It's not a normal business. It's a vanity project. Here's the structural problem that makes football ownership a trap. Salaries are tied to competitive success. If you want to win, you have to spend more money on salaries. The more you spend, the higher expectations become. If you don't keep spending at that level, you'll get relegated or finish outside the top 4 and lose revenue. So you're forced to keep spending. You can never spend less. It's an escalator that only goes up. The other problem is that you don't control your own revenue the way you do in American sports. In the NFL, if you're a bad team, you still get TV money because the league distributes it equally. In football, the rich clubs get richer because they make more commercial revenue. If you finish outside the top 4 in the Premier League, your Champions League revenue drops to almost nothing. You lose 100 million in revenue overnight. You can't cut salaries fast enough. You go bankrupt. Then there's the issue of player power, which is insane in football. Players have agents who demand massive wages. If you don't pay them what they want, they go to another club. You have no control. You're not running the team. The players are. You're just paying the bills. A star player can hold your club hostage for more money. If you don't pay them, they sit around complaining and poisoning the locker room. You have to pay them because you need them to compete. Let's do the actual math on owning a mid-tier European football club. You buy the club for 50 million. You have a stadium that seats 40,000 people. You're in a league where the average club makes about 150 million in revenue. Your average club makes 100 million. Your costs are 50 million in salaries, 20 million in transfers amortized over 3 years, 10 million in stadium costs, 5 million in youth academy, 5 million in administration and other. That's 90 million in costs. You're losing 10 million per year. After 5 years, you've lost $50 million. You've spent your entire 50 million investment just covering losses. The only way to make money is to win and get into the Champions League. If you finish in the top 4 and get Champions League money, you make an extra 50 to 100 million. Now you're breaking even or making a small profit. But getting into the Champions League is expensive. You have to spend big money on players. You have to hire a world-class coach who costs tens of millions. You need experienced players who cost hundreds of millions in transfers. To make that extra 50 million, you might have to spend 200 million. You're going backwards financially. This is why billionaires keep losing money in football. They buy clubs thinking they'll be profitable. They're not. They spend billions trying to win. They break even at best. At worst, they lose hundreds of millions. Abramovich lost money. The Newcastle owners will lose money. Elon Musk would lose money if he bought a club. It's not a business. It's a hobby for the ultra-rich. Here's what realistic scenario looks like. If you buy a mid-tier club with your 50 million, you buy the club. Year 1, you try to be smart and not overspend. You finish 7th. No Champions League. You lose 15 million that year. Year 2, fans are angry you're not winning enough. You spend 50 million more on players from your own pocket. You finish 4th and get Champions League. You make 20 million in Champions League revenue. You're down 30 million from your initial investment. Year 3, you're obligated to spend big again to defend your Champions League spot. You spend another 50 million on players. You lose in the round of 16 and only make 5 million in Champions League revenue. You finish 5th. No Champions League next year. You're down 130 million from your initial investment, and you're about to lose 50 million more because you can't compete without Champions League money. Worst case scenario, you buy a club in a lower league thinking you'll grow it. You spend your 50 million trying to get promoted. You don't get promoted. You've burned through your money. You go bankrupt. The club gets seized. You lose everything. This is why most football teams are owned by billionaires, government investment funds, or corporations. Regular people can't afford the losses. You need to be rich enough to lose billions without caring. You need to be willing to subsidize the club indefinitely. That's the only way this works, and even then, you're throwing money away for the privilege of being associated with a team. So if you're sitting there with 50 million thinking about buying a European football team and becoming famous, here's what you should actually do instead. Don't. Invest it in a business where you actually make money. Invest it in real estate. Invest it in technology. Invest it in literally anything else. A football team will take your 50 million and burn through it in player salaries and transfer fees and stadium costs, while the fans hate you and criticize every decision you make. The club doesn't care about your investment. The system doesn't care about your money. And you'll lose it all trying to compete with billionaires and government-backed funds. The only winners in football are the players and the agents. Everyone else is just losing money.